Hi, I'm Glenn Gilliam, Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships with the Althea Film Group and Principal of Real Dreams Entertainment, and you're watching Consider It Blacklit.
Welcome to this episode of Consider It Blacklit. I am Kim, your host, and for those of you tuning in for the first time, Consider It Blacklit highlights films, television programs, and stage plays that feature African Americans both up front and behind the scenes. We also discuss social issues as it relates to some of these programs and how they may or may not impact our communities. So thank you for tuning in, and we hope you continue to tune in each week. Today, we will highlight the 1950 film starring Sidney Poitier, No Way Out. Sidney plays a black doctor who is caring for two racist robbery suspects, their brothers. One of the brothers dies in his care, and the other brother accuses the doctor of murder. This situation eventually leads to a race riot. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Couldn't it be you that got killed instead of Johnny?
That's your favorite question, ain't it? Only the last time you asked it wasn't about being dead.
You scum.
It was why couldn't it be you I married to instead of Johnny?
You dirty scum.
Sounded good in the dark.
I should have killed you.
You had other things on your mind.
What is it, Dr. Brooks?
This man has stolen a scalpel. He's got it hidden on him. I want him searched.
Hand it over, Biddle.
I ain't got it, Doc.
Are you sure there's one missing?
I checked out 3, Dr. Wharton. We've only found 2.
He's had every opportunity to take it. Miss Blake and I had our backs to him most of the time. The scalpels were lying right here on the instrument table. And all he had to do was...
Today I have as my guest to discuss the film Glenn Gilliam. Glenn is the Executive Director of Strategic Partnership for the Althea documentary. He is also a principal of Real Dreams Entertainment. Welcome, Glenn.
Thanks, Kim. Great to be here.
So before we start talking about the movie No Way Out, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what you're doing with the documentary and Real Dreams Entertainment?
Thanks. Yeah, Real Dreams Entertainment was created out of a desire to get involved with TV and film production and provide some marketing and advertising resources for it. And most of the folks creating content were looking for connections to corporate sponsorship. So as often as I could do that, I would. And it allowed me to do some associate producing on some documentaries. And then that led to the Althea documentary, which was just a real blessing when it came along.
So let's talk about No Way Out.
Yes.
Okay, so we saw the trailer, but the trailer was kind of sanitized. It hardly had any scenes with Sidney Poitier in there. But the crux of the movie is the tension between the black and white community.
Yes.
Early on in the film, Dr. Brooks, that's Sidney Poitier's character, has a interaction with the elevator operator, Lefty.
Right.
And Lefty is clearly very hostile. Tell me what you thought about that scene.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's right at the start of the movie. Lefty, this working class gentleman who knows Sidney well, knows Dr. Brooks well, and he, Lefty, and their interactions very cordial at first, and then it immediately turns to the state boards that Dr. Brooks had to take, and Lefty insinuates right from the jump, that's a double standard for only black doctors.
Right, because he asked him, he said, oh, I heard you had to take a test that nobody else had to take.
Right, I thought you were already a doctor.
Yeah.
And Sidney has to explain, this is state boards that everybody's got to take and take them regularly, annually. And the fact that he didn't have to put his name on it didn't matter to Lefty. It's just a number. But Lefty's like, nah, they just, holding you down. And that's they have their ways of finding out who's black and who's not.
Right.
So Lefty's got some literal scars that he's grappling with.
Yeah. It was interesting when it was clear that Dr. Brooks had finished his internship, but he had asked Dr. Wharton, I guess that was the chief medical person, for him to he wanted to stay on a year longer because he felt like he didn't learn enough. But there were indications in the movie that he was clearly the best in the class.
Definitely.
I mean, what do you think about that?
Sidney's character is really trying to show some gratitude, show some deference to the chief medical officer, and I think, in some way, I think Mankiewicz was really trying to make sure that the levels were clear, that this is the man, and not to just say that he was deferring to white men, but I mean, I think there was some ability to put stations about, well, you're in this place and here's the real guy. And to, his credit, Dr. Wharton always, I think, interacted with Sidney and saying, hey, I don't care if you're black, green, or purple, I'm taking the best doctors, and I want to give you a shot because you've proven to me, your talent, your skill has proven that you could be, one of the best, and so I don't care if you're black or white, but that was, I think it was a nice piece. I think it might have been a little overdone because clearly Sidney was very skilled.
Well, when I saw that scene, what it reminded me of is, especially in corporate America, where you have to be twice as good.
Oh, sure.
And especially when you're first starting out, you always feel like you're not good enough until you learn that everybody around you knows even less than you. I mean, I think when I saw that scene, that's what it reminded me of, that he was saying, I'm a doctor, I'm the only black doctor here, I have to be excellent. So I'm gonna stay another year just to get those extra credentials. This movie had a lot of themes, even though it was done in 1950. There's so much that can still be applied to today, and that's what was amazing about this movie, and it's kind of sad too, because a lot of the themes are exactly the same. There was a situation where, eventually they do get an autopsy, and it's proven that the brother dies from a brain tumor and not because of something that Sidney Poitier did.
Right.
But the surviving brother still did not want to believe it. And I felt the movie showed that he really believed that this black doctor killed him, even though the evidence said he didn't.
Right.
And to me, that was an example of blind racism, and sometimes you see it even today with our current political climate.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's so explicitly clear that has not waned at all. I mean, Richard Widmark, who plays the really racist surviving brother, was, I think, really clear that this black doctor, who, out of hand, he had admonished him, he was, clear that he wasn't skilled and didn't know anything. Well, he removed the bullet that was lodged in him and was expert in his ability to do so, and I think knew that he was very qualified to be a doctor and to handle his brother, but the mere fact that some black doctor who has this station in life, who's achieved academically a certain level and was apparently better than him, who's just a two-bit thug, he just couldn't reconcile that in his mind, and his blind racism would not allow him to believe that this man could actually have the power to heal him or even diagnose him and take care of him. I can't imagine the kind of terrorism that blacks had to live with, where any interaction could lead to a riot. I mean, folks were kind of chomping at the bit to find a reason, and Lefty, as we talked about earlier, was more than happy about going to get his, his 2 cents worth of blood or whatever he thought was actually retribution for a sister that apparently got injured.
Right, because apparently
in an earlier race
early
riot.
on, it was referenced in the movie that, 6 years earlier, that Beavertown, that was the white town,
Beaver Canal,
came to the black town
Right.
and attacked them.
Let's be clear, Nigger Town. Sorry, that's what they called it. That's what it's.
Yeah, but I don't like using that.
Oh, okay. No,
Regardless,
I understand.
even if it's in a movie, I don't like using it.
N-word town. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were keeping it extremely real, obviously, in the film.
Yeah, and it was very
that's- yeah.
interesting because they kept the language very raw.
yeah.
That's why I was so fascinated by this movie, because in 1950,
Yes.
they put it all out there.
No political correctness. No need for
None
it back
whatsoever.
then. Right.
I was reading somewhere where Richard Whitmark, who played the racist brother,
Right.
felt bad. It really bothered him saying those words. And after this movie, he and Sidney became really lifelong friends.
Wow.
That was interesting.
Well, he's he's a real class act as far as an actor. I mean, and I've seen him. I mean, he was definitely an activist and a supporter of the civil rights movement. So this movie didn't at all characterize him in real life, but he was very effective.
Yeah, very convincing.
Very convincing in his disdain for all blacks, and Sidney in particular.
Yeah, in this movie. Yeah. So let's talk about the sister-in-law. The sister-in-law of the racist brother.
Right.
So
ex-sister-in-law, right?
Yeah, the ex-sister-in-law. So apparently she was one of the key characters in the movie.
Yes.
Apparently there was some kind of affair that went on with the surviving brother, even though she was married to the brother who was deceased.
Yeah.
And he used her, like a pawn to really fuel Beavertown into going to attack the black town.
The black where the blacks live. Yes.
Where the blacks live.
No, I mean, Richard Whitmark was a master manipulator, whether it was his deaf brother, who he used also as, this messenger, and then the sister-in-law or ex-sister-in-law, who I think felt compassion, number one, because she really did care about the ex-husband who died, but had this torrid affair. We don't know how long it had gone on, but obviously it was something that really worked on her, and she felt terrible about. And Richard Whitmark really lustily enjoyed having that over her, and then twisting her to believe that this doctor in particular, along with the chief medical officer, had nothing but her worst interest in mind, and wanted to use the autopsy to chop Johnny up and make a mockery of this Beaver Canal resident. Just really, it was very effective. But thankfully, she had some real good in her, as she was able to kind of see through that and really deplored the fact that this was going to lead to a race riot.
Right.
When she saw them preparing to get ready to beat and kill these folks, it really weighed on her.
Yeah. That's what drew me to this movie. Why I was so fascinated by it.
Right.
Remember, it was 1950.
Yeah.
Okay, and in the movie, the blacks get wind of the pending attack.
Right.
So they get everybody together.
Yeah.
They go over to Beavertown and they attack the whites.
Yes.
And it seems like they were victorious.
Oh, yes.
So it's 1950, and this main movie from a studio they're releasing. It's amazing. Yeah.
No, well, what was interesting is kind of a little backstory with that. How did Lefty and the crew find out? Well, it was this barber who could pass for white.
Yes.
Who heard what was going on and the plans to invade the black part of town, and he gave the information to the blacks and let them know, hey, this is what's going down. You can get the drop on them. And Lefty and them said, there was nothing that was going to keep him from being there. I mean, he was getting off work early. He's like, look, I'm going to meet up with my guys. And as I know we'll discuss a little bit in terms of Dr. Brooks's own family, his brother was angling
was all
to
down.
go.
Yeah. So Dr. Brooks, while he was going to school,
Right.
his wife took care of him, and the brother lived there with his wife.
Yes.
And he was studying, his brother was studying to be a mailman,
Ozzie
and then the mother
Davis.
lived in the house too,
Right.
But when it was time for the fight to happen, the brother wanted to go out and join Lefty, but his wife was like, "Oh no, I don't want you to get hurt."
Ruby D, yes.
Yes, Ruby D. But the mother was like, "Go on out there." And I was like,
let 'em
okay.
go.
Yeah, I was like, okay, Mom, because usually it's a natural inclination that your mother wants to protect you
Sure.
and doesn't want you to get hurt.
Right.
But I thought that was a really strong statement
Yes.
for a mother to actually encourage her son to go out there. So it kind of told you without saying it in words that the tension between the blacks and whites there was so bad
Yes.
that somebody had to do something.
Well, I think, you're exactly right. And I think the mother's motivations were clear. I have two sons, one of them who's trained to be a doctor, has taken his state boards. He is going to be a major breadwinner. We've invested a lot of time, as she says in the movie, a lot of books coming through the door and no money, you know. And she had to make a choice, I think. And she said, look, I'm making this apple cake so that Dr. Brooks's benefactor can hook him up and give him a good job. And unfortunately, Ozzie Davis, who played the other brother, was going to be a mailman. He was studying to be a mailman. But not that he was expendable at all, but if there was going to be somebody to defend the family's honor, it's going to have to be Ozzie.
Yeah, let him be the mailman.
You know, I mean, as sad as it is, and she was very strong in that. You know, there was no, waffling or anything. I mean, Ruby D, of course, as the wife, is, heartbroken about it. She doesn't want to see him go there. He could end up getting killed. I mean, that's an obvious result of these riots. But Mom was like, look, you got to go.
I know.
So let him go.
Yeah.
And that, that was really interesting and inspiring for me to see. I mean, to see these men who didn't shy away at all from defending themselves. I mean, I guess we'll talk a little bit about our favorite lines in the movie, because you had picked mine out when you were asking me that question about what my favorite line was. But in talking about that line that Lefty gives.
Oh yeah, let me, since we're talking about it. So Lefty is about to leave the hospital to go meet up with his boy so they could plan this fight. So Dr. Brooks tries to stop him and says to him, we're better than that. And he says...
Well, he said, look, let me just clarify. He says, if you go, you're no better than them.
Right. So then he says,
The Lefty says, yes.
Ain't that asking a lot?
Yes.
For us to be better than them when we get killed just to prove we are just as good.
Exactly. I mean,
I thought that was...
That was it for me. I mean, that line really is such a declarative statement about where the black community has been in this country since we've been here.
And they had
amazing.
Literal examples too, because he made it clear that, look at my face, see this scar. This is what happened the last time they attacked us.
Exactly.
And he said, my sister is still in a wheelchair. So it's almost they were in a situation that they had to act, or something worse could have happened to them.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, this wasn't about, maybe we'll get, no. I mean, you're either on or you're dead. And that's really, your life is in your hands, and that kind of consistent terrorism was a part of unfortunately, the life during Jim Crow and during those times. And
because it was very interesting that neither side wanted to go to, that wasn't an option to go to the police. Like, not even Dr. Brooks didn't even call up the police.
No.
Lefty didn't call the police, they're about to attack us.
Well, I mean, and I think that's one of the interesting parts that director Mankiewicz, film writer Mankiewicz, didn't get into that piece of it, because we all know, real history, how police departments acted with blacks. Many times police departments were the source of Klansmen, especially in the South, but you had the folks who were most racially biased wearing the uniform. Being judges. I mean, we had all the odds against us in so many of those situations, and the police were, a contributing, unfortunately, enemy when blacks were looking to either defend themselves. I mean, whether it's Rosewood or whether it's we know the stories, Black Wall Street. The police were in on it with, unfortunately, the white gangs. And thinking of Swartz, Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner. The police were complicit so many times, and that's unfortunate. And that's a history that is not totally separate from what we're dealing with today. Unfortunately, that excessive force, that police brutality, that mindset, unfortunately, doesn't pervade, obviously, all of police departments, but there are too many rogues who don't see the humanity in the black community and unfortunately feel that they can get away with some of these things.
And
but,
clearly
yeah.
in 1950, in this movie, in the community, they felt like nothing was done from the first attack.
Right.
So they had to do something. And that could mean some part of why the mother was like, yeah, go out and do something.
Yeah.
Don't let them come back into our community and hurt our daughters and our children.
No question.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I know there was a part that you were talking about discussing where the riot has taken place. You have all of these patients, all of these people who've been beaten, shot, what have you, in the ER at his hospital. And he's on staff. And unfortunately, you know, coming from Beaver Canal, the mother of one of the injured parties, white parties, didn't like the fact that Dr. Brooks, Sidney Poitier, was attending to her son and literally was berating him and ended up spitting on him. And, you know, I'm sure that wasn't uncommon, unfortunately. I thought his reaction, though, which I think we kind of talked about.
Because he just walked out.
He just said, okay, I'm done, you know, and.
Because the perfect doctor, his perfect personality cracked. It was like, you spitting in my face, okay, that was a straw. You know, you calling me the N-word didn't break me. But you spitting in my face, that broke me.
I mean, Richard Widmark hits him in the beginning when he's examining his brother, no problem. But this woman spitting in the face was the last straw. And that was a little bit of, not that it was unbelievable, it was tough to think that what he had to go through to get his internship, to be this doctor, to withstand so much, and to allow that incident to say, okay, I'm going to abrogate my responsibilities to be on staff here, when it's clear they were overwhelmed. I mean, I thought that was that might have been the only part I thought there was a little bit of a stretch there, but that
is the time that he decided to confess to the murder.
Right, exactly.
Because remember, he was trying to get them to do an autopsy at the beginning, and they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So by him confessing, then he forced the autopsy, and they were able to prove that the brother died from a brain tumor, and he did not kill him.
Very clever.
So, yeah.
But I know you were talking about how would that apply today?
Yeah, how would that apply?
He'd be behind bars. I mean, you know, he was pretty much still kind of running free. I mean, hanging out with the wife. I mean, he's, you know, kind of, it's like, wait, you confessing to a murder? Okay, wait, you're behind bars until
It's
further
1950.
notice. Right.
You may be hanging from a tree.
Right. I mean, I don't know how they kind of work that magic, a little bit of license there, because I think it would be difficult to say that a black man could confess to a murder back then.
And then get off so easy. Oh, the autopsy, we're fine.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, he wasn't even, he never spent any parts in jail at all. He never seemed to be taken in. It just seemed to be like they kind of worked that out where he could just be in the mix until the autopsy was completed, which, you know, was interesting. And of course, the autopsy came back as predictable.
I think in real life in 1950, if he would have confessed to the murder, done and done.
I mean,
They wouldn't have had the autopsy, locked him up, executed him, whatever, you know?
I think even Dr. Wharton wouldn't have been able to stop the onslaught of cops and anybody else who wanted to get to him. That was an interesting piece there. Clever move on his part to force the autopsy, of course. And that was because you were starting to wonder how were they going to get around this. I mean, the hospital administrator obviously wasn't going to touch it. He didn't want the scandal. The family wasn't going to give their consent. It just it was like a nice twist. It was a nice twist.
So let's talk quickly about the writer and the director of the movie.
Amazing.
Yeah, he
Joseph Mankiewicz.
Joseph Mankiewicz. He has a outstanding filmography. He did All About Eve.
Right. I don't know if there's anybody who's got a better one.
The Philadelphia Story.
Everything. I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, All About Eve, Cleopatra, Julius Caesar. I mean, his filmography is,
It's amazing.
yeah.
But I did read that the studio he
unbelievable.
worked with, they like to attack controversial issues.
Yes.
He did a movie that was centered around mental illness. And we're talking back in the 1950s. He also did one about, I think it was called Pinky, and it was about a black person passing for white. He did a movie on anti-Semitism. So he
And his
was
brother, as we talked about before, wrote Citizen Kane. I mean, is there enough accolades? I mean, the family's got Oscars all over the place. It's amazing.
But
I'm
it was
like,
very interesting.
Wow, yeah.
But I just became fascinated because, like I said, this movie where the blacks win a race riot in 1950 and they let it release.
Sure.
But I know the censors tried to get him to cut the race riot, but he refused to do it. But I guess it's retaliation. They gave it a limited theater release, so it was a flop at the box office. But we can see it now.
Yeah, on Amazon Prime. Yes,
yeah,
of course.
Amazon Prime.
That's true. That's the way to go see it.
Yeah. So as you can see, Glenn and I thoroughly enjoyed this movie.
Very
It deals with some very strong racial issues. It was done in the 1950s. It was definitely ahead of its time. If you're interested in seeing it, I think it's Sidney Poitier's premiere screen performance. Also, Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis were in it, and it was their first time in a movie also. They didn't get credited for it, but they definitely have a prominent role in this movie. So go check it out, and until next time, consider yourself blacklit.